Good evening, bad
Good
evening,
evening.
good evening. Thank you. Yes, thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing this one. We've switched places. Wow. Thanks to everyone for joining us again. After that, I'm not sure if you're eager to dissect it, but we needs must.
Needs must.
Thoughts?
I think the quality difference in the two teams was clear and obvious as the sun rising in the morning.
Yeah. Look, there was some discussion, not necessarily heated, in the channel group chat, where it was said that in isolation, those moments were weak, and it was stupid or seriously, I don't know, poor performance. But for me, it wasn't, because you look at what happened. Okay, oh God, what's his name? O'Reilly, their fullback, assisted the first goal and then went off, but Bob came on, and it was reinvigorated because Savinio on the left was the one that in front of him was the one that fed the ball. And for the second goal, now Haaland didn't do particularly much most of the game. We neutralised him. We neutralised Doku a lot, and he looked frustrated. He looked flummoxed. He looked tired. And then Guardiola turned the screw and brought on players, even as token gestures in the last few minutes of the game, in my mind, that would easily walk into our team. And I think most fans would get extremely excited if we were linked to any of them. No?
Yeah, 100%. And to be fair, most of the subs that they brought on would walk into most teams in the Premier League, and that's the difference. But like I said, at the end of the day, Manchester City, right? And I'm not taking nothing away from their victory today, right?
Yeah.
But Manchester City would not be where they are today if they'd have been under the constraints of PSR when they built a team. They wouldn't have won all the leagues that they've done. They wouldn't have the players that they've got. Haaland, yeah, maybe because he was cheap. He was like, he once in a lifetime bargain because of his sell-on clause from Borussia Dortmund. But the rest of the players that they've brought in and spent over £1 billion on, they probably wouldn't be at Manchester City unless they'd had the success they've had.
Yeah, I mean,
they were probably the team in the league that benefited the most from the rules not being there before PSR came in.
And even when they have breached them when they were in, they're then using their position to obfuscate the legal process. It's like almost like a defensive use of malicious use of malicious prosecution but the reverse is they're delaying their fair accountability through the application of money, and it's a self-serving argument to go, well, is this money unfairly or unjustly used, leveraged and gained? Anyway, back to the football. Yeah, so to be fair though, when you have that situation where there is such a gulfing class between those two teams, that even the value, the book value or the purchase value of the teams and that you field, it's almost inevitable that if you don't capitalize on those very few moments, because they were fine margins for me, McNeil coming on, it just demonstrates the difference when like Njai had moments of absolute brilliance. But even against City, they're constrained to fine margins when he had that shot and Donnarumma tipped it over, and it's so yeah.
Yeah, there was flashes of brilliance from Njai and KDH. I thought done well to a point, and I think that the defense done all right, to be fair, in that first half. But like I said to you when I spoke to you before on WhatsApp, Jan, we seem to lack this ability to be able to concentrate for 90 minutes, like full on concentration and little lapses of concentration cost us dear. See what I mean? And I'm not gonna single out players because like people are saying Beto and this, that, and the other. Yeah, the first one, I think he just hasn't seen it and he's reacted late to the ball coming across. Otherwise, that's a tap in for him, isn't it? You know what I mean? But once again, the balls are getting played up to him. He needs to have the balls played into feet for him to have any hope of controlling it and holding on to it. Otherwise, if it's lofted into him, it just bounces off him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, to not have a striker that we don't have a striker that is at the level that of Grealish. You come and the excitement around his arrival because of his skill, his ability to turn it on and to threaten. And Jai has it. Garner has a composure. James Garner, and today I mean, we have players that stand up and quite easily. If there'd have been a little bit more concentration or a little bit more nous or I don't know, maybe some fresh legs or more quality, whatever you want to say. Those two moments might not have happened, but equally, I don't think we capitulated in the way that a lot of teams. I mean, City are capable of banging 3, 4, 5 in, and the fact that they don't have the freedom to play because Haaland had far more chances in, I think, the last 10, 15 minutes of the game than he'd had the entire game, right?
Yeah,
Sorry, we've got
yeah. I
David
mean,
in.
realistically, it could have easily been 4 or 5 if he'd took his chances in injury time that he had. If it wasn't for Pickford, then it would have been 4 or 5 because then they'd sort of run out of steam and we're just sort of like, running on empty.
And we're joined by Basil here. Not sure, were you at the game or did you watch the game?
I just watched the game. Is the sound okay? Let me know if it's...
Perfect. You're fine
Yes.
Thoughts on that one?
My thoughts on the game. I thought we played quite well, to be fair, for about 60 minutes. And then you've probably already said it, just a couple of lapses of concentration with Haaland. He showed Haaland today what a world-class striker can do. Unfortunately, Beto just doesn't have that instinct like Haaland does to just get away from his man, anticipate where the ball's going to drop in and be able to just clinically finish it. And I think that was the difference up to that point. If we'd got the 2 goals from Beto, we might have got something from the game. But if you don't take your chances at a ground like that, where City have so much of the ball, then you can't really expect to come away with anything, can you? But overall, I thought we were fairly competitive. I don't think City were in full pelt the first half. I think they were not quite at it, and I think we were good. So I think it kind of cancelled each other out. Both sides had chances, but it went in 0-0. And I think second half just got away from us. First one, okay, all right, you've missed it, but he just pulled off from the centre backs, and it was a good header. And then you could see it again so quickly. It was just game over, and you could see the heads dropped, and it just wasn't a good reaction to going 1-0 down. Before you knew it, you're 2-0 down. You think, why am I watching this now? I mean, then it's just a case of let's give Martin Röhl a run out and see how some of the fringe players get on. That's kind of my general thoughts. You can't be too disappointed with it because you're away at Man City. You don't expect to win the game, but it's a bit frustrating that we showed glimpses and live and die. I thought, particularly first half, just looked ridiculous. Like the touches, he brought the ball just on top of his foot from the sky down about a couple of times, dribbling past players. He got shot off, got the cross in for Beto. Beto should be anticipating when Ndai gets the ball that he's going to give him the ball. He's going to give him something of quality. Like Grealish, when the players see Grealish get the ball, they make the runs off him. They know they're going to get it in. But he seems to react to it rather than anticipate it. That's the disappointing thing. I'll send it back to you.
Wes?
I think we, after the first half, the first half showing, which was pretty good. Let's be fair, right? And maybe we should have went in 1-0 or 1-1 maybe at half time, but we didn't, and that kind of led us fans then into a false sense of security. But HAALAND never really done anything all game. But then he's not really meant to. He's just there to score goals. He's a goal scorer. Do you know what I mean? And the difference between, a £64 million or whatever Man City paid for him from Borussia Dortmund, and what a £30 million striker is there and for all to see. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the main thing is that we didn't capitalise on early goals. Look, there might have been some niggles. There was the warning signs of what was going to happen early on, because we didn't capitalise. We didn't take a chance. We could have been 1-0 up. It might have provoked Man City, but then. We also had a couple of instances where there were a few fouls, and the referee Tony Harrington was allowing it to play to a certain extent. And it was a relatively clean game, but there were moments when City were just being a bit cute. Like Foden does it quite a lot and managed to get, I think, a yellow card for Ghana, despite it was was less innocuous. It was more innocuous than a previous foul that I think Foden had committed and got away with. And it's just little things like that you go, okay. I'm not talking about any inconsistencies in refereeing. It's their alertness to do that, and he's thought about it, and he's made it seem then, because the referee's going to buy that it's been a vindictive battle or something, and oh, he's been really injured. He rolls around, and it's the same way that, as you say, that Beto isn't able to receive the kind of service or hold it up with the right kind of finesse that, as we talked about earlier, Calvert-Lewin did, and it just becomes almost going through the motions when you don't get those fine margins and you don't capitalise on the small chances. All it takes is that one moment from City, and then later on in the game, what it was, 58 minutes. You're right, 60 minutes was a great point up to that. We'd done so well, and it wasn't a case of parking the bus. We just hadn't capitalised on this few chances. And then City.
Yeah, City had multiple gears that they were able to step up, whereas Everton were probably playing at the most competitive gear they could have, really, under the circumstances. So I think that was the problem, and I think, as I said before, not having a goal to build on in the second half give the City the intensity, the incentive, and the intensity to go on and say, let's step it up and let's find a goal and let's win the game.
Yeah, and I think Peter's just articulated that. He's just said, I don't know about you, but I'm not entirely frustrated that they were better than us overall, because it's expected, because we're overmatched, but it's annoying not to take chances when overmatched. And you're right, that you need to have that predatory hunger to take that. And at times we've seen it. It's just you don't have as much hope that we sort of would capture those moments even later in the game. Sometimes it's like, why do we have to have this hope of resilience? Can't we just take the chances? Yeah.
But I
Oh,
mean, people keep mentioning about having a decent striker, and we all love one, right? We all love a striker that can bang in 20, 25 goals a season, right? But you're having to pay top dollar for them, or you find a rough diamond and polish him up, and he becomes amazing. Realistically, we haven't got the money at this present moment in time to go out and spend 70, 80 million pound on a striker, right? So we have to make do with what we can, shopping in the bloody bargain basements at Aldi in the middle aisle. You know what I mean? So we can be frustrated about the fact that we haven't got strikers that can score goals. So that's the manager's responsibility to get goals from elsewhere in the team. Then find a way of creating goals throughout the whole team, not just reliance on your strikers.
It did seem a little bit formulaic. Our attack was, okay, we're opportunistic, and Jai drives forward, maybe tries to get in the side of the box, but it's always a ball across or trying to find, the second. Well, it's not the second man because we've always got a lone striker. We're one up front. But I mean, shall we just sort of dissect those City goals? Sorry.
Yeah. So Basil, what do we do now? Right. Obviously, Beto again wasn't great today, and he was subbed off on 67 minutes or something for Barry, and then he came on, put himself about a bit. Don't get me wrong, but does he now drop Beto and put Barry back in, because that's not doing nobody any favours?
No, I don't think so. I think he has to stay with Beto. I think Beto has proven last season he can get some goals for Everton, and he can be a presence up there. Yeah, I think. Well, I think Undai had an extra goal in him, but I think he can do the job there. But it's difficult because he actually thrives when he seems to be like the underdog, and he comes on and he gets the goal and it gives him the confidence. Whereas when he knows he's starting week on week, that's when he seems to drop off. I don't know why. But personally, no, I would start with him because I don't think from seeing Barry that he's ready to play game in, game out and be consistent. I think Beto will be consistently hit and miss at least, and he causes a bit of havoc. But I think maybe think about Alcaraz alongside Beto, a bit closer to Beto, because I think they have a really good understanding and partnership when they've played together. I think Dewsbury Hall, he's a good player, but I'm not sure. Today, he just seems to the game just goes through him because of the nature of them having the ball and us just being behind it. He doesn't really get the ball that much. He wasn't a driver in that midfield for us. I don't know if there's something there, but we've got to find a way, haven't we, of getting
This is what me and Yann was saying in the pre-match. It would be interesting to see how Dewsbury Hall plays without Jack Grealish, because obviously him and Jack Grealish have got a great understanding. But we was expecting Njai to play out on the left, and he never. And Alcaraz didn't. I thought, to be fair, Alcaraz done all right. He was kind of like drifting between left wing and centre mid, but I think that's just his natural sort of instinct to do that.
Yeah. I think that worked for this game because we had to be a bit more compact and narrow, and obviously Grealish would have hugged the touchline, and I think it worked better that having more players in midfield, especially those City fullbacks who are actually centre midfielders. They drift inside, they make it 4 or 5 numbers around the midfield. Having Alcaraz and then just cutting in a little bit was, I think, helped us defensively, and they both put a real shift in today defensively and looked to be aggressive and competitive going forward. It was the others that seemed to be not really on the same wavelength at times.
Now let me if I was just about to say before, let's just briefly, if I can, sort of dissect the City goals or how they occurred from my mindset, because we weren't subjected to sustained periods of pressure where we spent the majority of the game hemmed into our box, or long periods. Now that for me was a positive, but you've all, in my mind, if you also bear in mind that we've got some players playing out of position, we missed Grealish. You'd say that we're not playing players in their optimal, how they'd be optimally deployed. We've talked about it in the pre-match, Wes. I don't want to go into that, but essentially what happens is City were kind of on the counter. They're fit, they're faster, they're better, they're stronger. On paper, whatever it is that requires players to be better and beat better opponents and get better results, they are it, right? And so when that happens, if it's not, because it's not purely tactical, when that happens and they go on the attack, and we've up to this point kind of neutralized Doku for the most part. We thought that would be a weak point with O'Brien playing out of position, or a player who's playing out of position. etc. Well, what do you expect us to do? We defend. If we defend deep, we're inviting them pressure, and we sit back and we don't attack the game. And to be fair, we did try to play football and try to be attacking. So then, if we're too attacking and overcommit, we're caught on the counter and completely exposed, which we weren't really. But the point is, you're not going to expect a variety of supply to Beto because we've got the lone striker up front. We're not going to overcommit to have 5-6 bodies in the box in a line waiting for a ball from Mykolenko or O'Brien, because City have been incisive and constantly close down the gaps and the men, and they don't get caught out by switching the play and things like this. I mean, it's possible on the move, but it's got to be a counter. You can't just do because they know what they're doing. So that's why maybe it's moments like when they attack and there's a couple of moments of Haaland flying in, taking a leaping header, heading it down onto the line. Pickford still gets a foot up to it, but just can't clear it. I'm not saying I accept mediocrity, but I'm saying I accept the reality. And they were better than us, and we did very well not to capitulate further. I think that's just my summation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you've got it spot on, to be honest, mate. Rod Ross turned around and probably hits the nail on the head. We've got square pegs in round. Now, I think we can pretty much say at the moment we've got a pretty decent midfield, right? And we've got a half decent defence. And when Branthwaite comes in, the weak link obviously is the ability to score goals. If we can get goals in the team, that solves a lot of our issues, right? So it's it's not all doom and gloom. We probably took one, the at this present moment in time, the way that they're playing, and they didn't play great today, don't get me wrong, but at this moment in time, we come up against probably maybe the champions of this season, and first half we probably matched them, I'd say.
To an extent,
and then second half, lack of concentration, and it cost us. And in this league, you can't do that. You can't switch off for a second, and we all know that. But like I said, Rod Ross was saying, square pegs in round holes. Not a lot we can do without a big spend. We can't or don't have the money to buy, so it's a catch-22. But it's going to be maybe 3, maybe 4 seasons before we see the benefits of the extra revenue coming into the stadium, before we can generate decent, player buys. But
purchases.
In the meantime, we're stuck with what we've got.
I think, there's other factors that, but it is a reality. It's like a purge in a way, a systemic purge where you can't just, it's not like we can go out and just buy 25 new players, or if that's what it takes, or go out and, you could, but it's a slower process.
But the rules, as far as I'm aware, the rules of the PSR rules are changing next season. They were meant to change this season, but they're meant to be changing next season now. So, maybe, if we do generate revenue from the stadium, more revenue from the stadium this season, then maybe we can go out in the summer next season and maybe find that striker that we desperately need. And we also need, we need a right back. Can't see us getting much in January. So what we've got now, we have to sort of find goals from.
We need fullbacks and we need a striker, but I think it's going to be hard to go and attract a good striker without getting into Europe somehow, just sneaking into the Conference League, or even maybe finishing 8th or 9th, just showing that kind of intent that we're moving in the right direction. Because we have brought in Barry, who you'd say is a promising young striker, and he could turn out to be a great striker, but that, can we attract a level that's better than a young promising striker in another country, or a sort of old has-been from the Premier League who will knock you in 7 or 8 goals a year? How do we get that next level of striker without spending 70 million and hoping they'll come and giving them 250k?
Being Everton, we can't. we're not going to be able to attract a striker that's going to score, 25 goals a season. Well, Peter Duggan had a suggestion there before, and he said, I've never heard of this guy, I'll be honest with you. Valentin Castel, I can't even fucking say his name. Yann, you probably better.
Valentin Castellanos.
Yeah. I've never heard of him. Never heard of him. But I'll take Peter's word. He's probably more clued up on it than what I am. I don't watch Italian football, so I wouldn't know.
He's a 27-year-old Argentinian who plays for Lazio. Let's have a quick look at his record. I have not heard of him, to be fair. He looks like a pop star.
Kevin said we need to spend money to get a top-notch striker, or we'll never do well.
I don't know, though. I don't know if I'd opt for him, really. 70 appearances, 16 goals, but he's been to I don't know. No, maybe not. It just looks like a lot of loan movements to places, so he's not really settled anywhere. But he is.
Well, Thierry Barry had a good record in France. So, if you go on Thierry Barry's record, he's got a better record than that guy.
I mean, I don't know what to say. It's France, though, isn't it? It's almost a monopoly.
Yeah, unless PSG.
Yeah. Oh, dear. I mean, we didn't batter us. Pickford didn't have to make a lot of wonderful saves. They had a few shots, like O'Reilly had one with his left foot that went across goal. Yeah.
Roy said, we have the worst recruitment in the Premier League. Not having a recognised right back is unforgivable, and we are in a position to pay 27 million on Barry if he isn't ready. Totally agree. But we need, I think it was also the plan to offload Chimiti, eventually 10 mil for him. So we had to, we couldn't go into the season with just one striker. Going into the season with just two strikers is all wrong anyway. I think you should have at least 3 strikers in your squad. So for the competition alone, do you know what I mean? But the fact of the matter is, the 2 strikers that we have got are as bad as each other. But Barry gets away with it because of his age. Beto can't get away with it because of his age.
I don't know. The issue for me is maybe I'm blinded by a different principle, or a principle that I have, which is I will not blame a player for simply not being good enough. I will not blame or castigate a player for being what they are. I will blame a player for not trying or for making obvious errors and mistakes. And he does try. So yes, we could sit and criticize him quite accurately and analyze his play, but he wasn't bought to be I don't think he was really bought to be a threatening top of the league, top goal scoring striker. And I'm sure he'd like to be, and we'd all like him to be. But the truth is, who are we going to attract? Because it's when people say, "Oh, throw," I know you're not going to say this, but some people are like, "Just go out and buy this and buy that," and I'm like, "With what? To who?" And and it's a two-way street. You can't just necessarily offer a player. Some players will not come to a club if they don't think that it's worth their while, not just monetarily.
Of course they won't. Of course they won't. And you can have, a shiny new stadium and all this, that, and the other. But when it boils down to it, players want to go to a team to win things, right? Don't get me wrong, a lot of them are after the money, but that if these rules come in next season, that's the money's going to dry up, because you can only spend so much on your infrastructure, your team and stuff like that. So the days of offering players £100,000 a week contracts are going to be gone because you won't be able to afford it. You look at Chelsea and they've got something like 44 players in their squad. And if they're in Europe, they're only allowed to spend, I think it's 70% of their revenue on their team, on wages and stuff. So a lot of them players are either going to have to be loaned out or offloaded.
Well, it does beg the question that what is the purpose of the rules? Okay, so you can articulate what they're trying to stop. They're trying to stop unfair spending, and then you have to ask what is unfair. But then we have a broad understanding that it's just throwing money and buying whoever you like. Okay, but what is the principle that guides this? Fairness. Okay, so if that's it, then what is the fairness? The fairness should be that football is not, that there is some ability that it's played under the spirit of competition, and that is not the case when you allow it to when you allow it to perpetuate in a state where the current system only benefits those who are already benefiting. And I'm not on about Everton, purely Everton, but look at the entire football pyramid. I mean, there is much greater ways that, look, if it's about the squad budget or the squad size, and maybe it's tied to the lowest in the league or anything like that, or maybe there's standardization across the country or coefficients or who knows, and there's certain allowance, maybe you then have a limit in which you then have to like superstars or draft limits and certain things like in American sports, or maybe players have to be loaned out for a season on under a special clause to balance it out, and you then have to then allocate it that way, or certainly maybe be taxed on their revenue and profits and fed down to the football structure lower down the leagues all the way down to grassroots, because that would be fair. That would be equitable, and that would reflect the spirit of the Crouch Report.
They've been saying that for years, haven't they?
Sorry?
Well, they've been talking about this, the money being filtered down from the Premier League for years, and as far as I'm aware, still nothing's been sorted.
It would be so easy to do, and yet look at what they've done
coming in. But yeah, but these new rules that are coming in, Jan, right? They're just there to keep the big boys at the top, because from what I can gather, right, if you're in Europe, you're allowed to spend 70% of your revenue that comes in, right? If you're in Europe, right? If you're not in Europe, I think it's 85%, right? Now, say for instance, obviously Everton's going to generate more money now because of the new stadium, right? But say for instance, Everton generates, say 300 million, right? And they're allowed to spend 85% of that, which is probably what, about 250 million, say, just as a ballpark figure. I'm not Carol Fortune.
255 million.
So 255 million, right? Now, Manchester City generates per season between 700 and 800 million pounds per season, right? So 70% of that revenue is still a lot more than 85% of 300 million.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Basically,
so it's never going to be a level playing field.
It's not. It's all. Yes, you're right. It's like the paradox of having a tax on a levy for when you pay for petrol in this country. And the point being that, are they saying that for argument's sake, are they saying, obviously, I know there's the gradated payments for league finishing positions, but are they saying the difference between playing European football and non-European football is 15%? If it is 70 and 85%, the difference is 15% in an average club's or any set club's revenue. Nonsense.
Yeah, but not in the Europa Conference League. It isn't. See what I mean? If you're in the Europa Conference League, like, you probably will. If you win that, you get a fucking packet of fucking Haribo Star Mix. You know what I mean?
But yeah, and then also the question being, what is the punishment for breaking these rules? Because if you're on the border and trying your best to comply with rather stringent regulations, and then you err, isn't it just going to penalise clubs? Because this is quite right. it hasn't worked for. I mean, I know a little bit about the situation for Red, but this is true. It hasn't worked for so many clubs. And look at what might happen to Forest now. And what if it's weaponized with the claim against we're going to take Everton, all this kind of nonsense. Well, it's just we're going around the houses, really, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're going.
But the whole crux of it is when you've got a City and a Chelsea that are going out and spending millions and millions of pounds every single transfer window, selling the fucking women's team to themselves as well as hotels that they already own. And these loopholes. They've even been to they even went to the Premier League teams and said, "Do you want us to close this loophole?" 1-0 Arsenal, great goal that Calafiori. Oh no, he's offside, is he? Yeah, no, it's a goal. No, it's offside. So they even went to the Premier League and asked if they wanted to close this loophole about selling women's teams to each other, and they said no.
Yeah, it's one rule for thee and one for me.
They're all shit scared of each other. When you've got the likes of Burnley suing another Premier League team, right? Now that's not going to go down well in any stretch of the imagination. Do you know what I mean?
Like being an informant. It's like being a grass, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's like
but all that does is incentivize. All that does is incentivize them because they don't want to open the door for liability by setting precedent. So all it does then is, if that's the case, because there'd be far more people that would then react in the same way should they find City guilty. Yeah. So all that does is incentivize them to let the City thing sort of go away through some loophole, technicality, or other form of punishment.
But the issue there was that when we got found guilty of our breach, the independent panel turned around and said there's grounds for a compensation claim from the other clubs. They actually stated that, right? Without really knowing whether there was any grounds, because they don't know the evidence behind it and all that. Do you know what I mean? Even though they stated we had no sporting advantage, they still come out with that, which give Burnley and I think Leeds dropped theirs anyway, didn't he? And was it Leicester and Southampton, something like that? But they then thought that they could take us to court and get 50 million out of us, and they might do, but ultimately they should be suing the Premier League because it was the Premier League's rules what we adhered to. We turned around and said, yeah, but we held our hands up, we're guilty, and the Premier League turned around and said, well, you're going to be punished the season after. And that was when the season before Burnley went down.
Yeah. Sorry. Not to be, we've got to sort of drag it back to today's football. As we, just if I may, it's not in any way a segue or a link, so it's just a sort of cold cut. It's nice to think that we might not be portrayed as embarrassing ourselves on Match of the Day. I know a lot of Evertonians don't watch it simply because of the favoritism or bias or our opinion of that. And it's but it's nice to know, well, look, we didn't capitulate, we didn't fall apart. And what does that mean for next week against Spurs?
They're a different animal this season, aren't they, under Thomas Frank? I've always liked Thomas Frank as a manager. I would have liked to see them at Everton at some point, but I don't think that's ever going to happen now, unless Spurs take a dramatic turn for the worse. But they're a good team this season, aren't they, Spurs? But not unbeatable. I think. Are we at home or away? Home, are we?
We're at home, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, certainly after the Palace game, we shouldn't be sort of worried about anybody coming to the HD Stadium.
Take me back to the good old days of what? Anyway.
Peter's going to
What?
say Lee Dixon is Lee.
Nah.
Less said about him, the better.
Anyway.
I'm going to go off. I'm going to go off piece here, right? I'm going to go off piece here and have a little rant, right? And I think I mentioned this the last time England played an international, and it's every fucking single time they play. The only person whose position is ever under scrutiny is fucking Jordan Pickford's. Every single England international. And then it's like, should be playing for the Champions League team. Yeah, but he's not. And he's playing for fucking little old Everton. And he's still fucking getting in the England team as number one. And I've got 80 caps. So fuck off.
No, don't, because I'm going to get political and agree with you here. It's not political. Why does it have to be political? But it's about that everything has to be monetary. We invented money because we didn't want to trade and barter, and we didn't have access to all this stuff. It's a fiat currency that replaces basic needs and wants. And yet now we equate money with having those needs fulfilled. So people no longer actually chase the needs, they chase the money, which is why they're fundamentally unhappy, even though they've got all the fucking money they could need. So, but he's loved. We come up with songs. He sends message like he loves it. He's crazy. He's bonkers. Goalkeepers are always a little bit weird. They're always weird. Come on. They're all weird, right? We love him. And he loves it here. Why the hell? He's got, you don't, it's just, anyway.
That's it. That's just it, right? Maybe, just maybe, right?
He's happy.
He actually likes being at Everton and his family enjoy living where they live. And he doesn't want to uproot his 3 kids and his missus to go and live in London or Newcastle. Well, he's not going to ever play for Newcastle, let's be honest, right? But maybe
he's not going to go to Liverpool.
Maybe,
he's not going to go to, yeah.
So what's the big deal? He's happy. He's happy to sign another 4-year deal, taking him way into his 30s. Do you know what I mean?
And if you really care, and if they really care about having the best England goalkeeper rather than scrutinising it, if he is the number one, then you'd have to argue, well, what's the best to get the best out of his game is not uprooting that and letting him play the happy, most settled football and not try to undermine him, because then it seems like a concerted effort to just have a dig because he's at Everton.
Yeah. And let's be honest, right? He's seen off plenty of competition for the England spec. You know what I mean? And people go, oh, Pope and Ramsdale and Henderson and this, that, and they all had the chances when they played in friendlies, and they were all shit. They were all like the distribution wasn't as good as his, or they let goals in. He's now, was it 8 clean sheets for England? No goals conceded since last year. Okay, they're playing people like Wales and Latvia and Andorra, but that's besides the point. Yeah, just broke the record.
Sorry. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I don't see why every time England want to play, and you watch, I think there's another international. I think there might be a 3-week break the next one. So I've been told. Don't quote me on that. But you watch when they play next, right? He probably won't play because it's pointless, because they've already qualified, and maybe they want to go through with a 100% record. So they might play him. But if they do, his place will be scrutinised again.
As per. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily, forgive me, it's a bit fast and loose, but I don't feel like doing a player review thing, because to dissect it again and scrutinise, I don't really think anyone was to blame for that. Erling Haaland just did what Erling Haaland does.
Yeah, and I don't think you can either, point fingers at like Sir Jake O'Brien. I mean, he's he's not a right back, and he would come up against Doku, who's very tricky, and they were doubling up in him and Njai. Said before the game, didn't we, about Njai tracking back and stuff, and he done great going back, but you could tell he weren't happy about it. You know what I mean? You could tell he didn't want to go back, but he did. And you know, it was just that lapse in concentration, and then the next minute you're on the back foot, aren't you?
All right. Well, onwards and upwards next week, Spurs at home, and I suppose we'll let people go and watch.
Is that another 3 o'clock?
Sorry?
Is that another 3 o'clock kickoff?
Or
the Spurs in Europe? Let me just check
no,
that.
it is.
Let me just check. Saturday. No, it's Sunday. Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. It's 4:30 kickoff. Yeah, so Spurs must be in Europe that next week.
Oh no, it might be. I think it's a TV. I don't know. Oh yeah, who knows? Because they
What's
were in there. But they're playing Villa tomorrow, and yeah. So
I just want to mention before we go.
Oh, can I also? Yeah.
Right, just before we go, right. I just want to mention what I said to you before in our little chat about the fixtures. Sky brought out, this is how the bias annoys the shit out of me, right? The fixtures, the live TV fixtures were brought out by Sky this week. And apart from Chelsea, we're the only team in this league that are only on once in the fixtures leading up to Christmas. You've got teams that are Burnley, I think, are on 3 or 4 times. Leeds are on about 3 times. Do you know what I mean? And you just think, that's why we've got no fucking money. Because we're never on telly. Because you get extra money each time you're on telly, and don't you?
No, isn't it split?
It all adds up. All goes in the pot. Huh? No,
and I suppose it's also the brand exposure. Yeah.
It's split, right? But when they renew the TV rights deal, right, the revenue is split between the clubs, right? But then every time you're on TV, you get extra money as well. That's true.
Cool. On that note, I'm not sure if I did when I last, because it's been a while since I've done a thingy, but a shout out to Graham, who I met before the Palace game, was it? Or no, God, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, oh mate. But you're right. On that note, it's before I have a heart attack from the stress. It's been emotional. It's been a long afternoon, but enjoy it if you can after that.
Only another 7 days before the next game. You look sad there, Jan.
It's life goes on.
At least it's not as bad as the last 3 seasons, is it? Where you never look forward to the next game.
That's true. So on that note, with some trepidation, I look forward to the game next Sunday. I'm sure we will be covering it on Follow Everton. So thank you, Wes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Me and the Robster will be back next week.
Hey, well, that's it. You heard it from one of the horse's mouths. Whereas from the horse's ass.
Working the Robster.
Okay.
He's been on a like a shift pattern, but as of I think Tuesday, he's finished his shift pattern and he's got 20 days off. So yeah, so we'll be back on. Me and the Robster will be on. So
yeah, and as just reminded me that you did say before the closing moments of the pre-match, you did say 2-0. So well done.
Well, it's not something that I'm bragging about. You're the first to actually mention it. I think I don't think I've mentioned it on here, but yeah, it's not something I was happy about. But like I say, it was City, and it was kind of expected. I think people people would have, people were saying in the pre-match comments prior to the game were saying, people who were saying we'll take a draw out of this when we can beat these. I think if we'd have got a draw out of that today, we'd have been more than happy.
But we didn't.
But we didn't. But we're still in a decent position in the league, 10th.
10th, yeah. 11 points. It would have been nice to get 14 and we could have leapfrogged them. But as it is, it's a decent spread. Wolves are in trouble. Things aren't looking
And a
great
long
for a
way
few
to go.
teams. But yeah.
And a long way to go. And Peter's saying the last thing he wants to say is not the Forest. Please don't hire Sean Shite. Thank you.
On that note, goodbye, everyone. It's goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from him.
Yeah, innit? I don't know why
Have
I
a good
do that.
weekend, guys.